least a couple states here. So we interestingly played it quite well in some of the previous presentations, Brian's and things like that, where it's like, you gotta spend some time over here on the prevention side. That's where traditionally your firewalls, your IPSs, your endpoint clients, and things like that are. Honestly, they do a lot of work, but they're actually, relatively speaking, nowadays very basic, right? The sophistication of both what attackers are able to do, what toolkits are available out there, and just also what the industry has evolved to, has basically said, these things are necessary but insufficient. We actually spent some time talking about the cleanup phase, like what happens. You use your SIMs, which are basically security event monitoring tools, look through logs, find out how do you breach, how do you prevent it again, how bad was that damage. And then you pay people like Mandiant, which is a familiar term around here because they got bought by FireEye, over there in Dublin, to go basically fix things for you until you have that thing scored. You pay a lot of money for that. I mean, like a lot of money. But there's a problem here, right? Is between here and here, what are you doing? And more importantly, what's the attacker doing, right? So when someone's penetrating your network, generally through an unsecured web server, unpatched web server, or a phish, right? I mean, like, none of you guys have ever been phished, right? Ever? Right? Never clicked on that link in that email that looks like it came from your mother, right? No? Never? Okay. Well, I guarantee you someone in your company has. Somewhere where you've worked they have. Because when we get deployed into networks, we always find something. It could be as simple as Bitcoin mining or something like that, but often it's much, much more sophisticated than that. So it happens. And you might be at fault. So the question is, what do you do to find these attackers?
This is a demonstration.
Right? Remember, when an attacker comes into your network, they don't actually know where they are, right? They got into, say, the admin's machine, right? They don't know what your network looks like, right? They don't know how you're using AD or Kerberos. They don't know where your assets are, your databases, right? There's a bunch of things they've got to do, and we're going to talk about some of those here in a little bit. To basically do damage, to steal, or carry on progressive attacks as necessary. It's a hard problem. Our solution is to automate this with AI. And when we say AI, it's a very big buzzword. I like to think about this as really just a very advanced form of basically statistics that we're applying. But it's so advanced nowadays that it's actually self-teaching when you give it information. And you've got to do this because every network is a snowflake. Every home network is a snowflake. Every corporate network is a snowflake. There are any two offices that are the same. So you need to use intelligence and automation to basically adapt to those networks to be effective. That's what we're about, and that's what we're trying to do. With that, this is kind of nice. This is just some of the behaviors.
This is a demonstration of
things that an attacker may do. Easy stuff over here. Bitcoin mining, ad click fraud, stuff like that. More serious stuff as you go over here, right? Command and control. This is where they've established basically some kind of tenant, right? And now they're on your network. They've got a landing point. They're sharing that landing point. Now they got to look around. They got to spread, things like that. This is how they're looking around, right? A lot of recon. Find out who's left open ports on. Figure out which machines are responding. What kind of machine it is. Get their fingerprint, right? Know if they're a Windows machine that might be able to attack. Things like that. Then they got to move, right? When they land, they're probably on your laptop, right? But that doesn't do them any good, right? They're not interested in your laptop. They're interested in your databases. They're interested in your customer list. They're interested in things like that. Actually, so much so, if you want to have serious fear about how bad this problem is, we have a customer, Minnesota. Does anyone know where Minnesota is? It's like not a very big deal state. And sorry, people are great. Land of 10,000 lakes, a lot of lakes. Radio station, okay. Radio station just operating normal, not a big deal, right? I don't know, maybe 10,000, 20,000 listeners. Well, guess what? Once a day, around 2 a.m., there was a single callback being made to somewhere in the UAE. What are they transferring? You go look and you find out. All they were doing was reading a single table of ad sales information for basically that day and sending it to the UAE. That was it. And who knows how many other places this was being done, but effectively it was being done for monetary gains. They knew exactly the pricing and who was paying what for ads in the middle of Minnesota. Right? And that's a whole bunch of stuff that we do here is to find things like that, right? Subtle, right? Sophisticated in some nature, right? They figured out where the database was. They figured out exactly what they wanted, right? They had to go search around and find that. They took just that. Very, very small communication. Generally, because it's so small, it wouldn't even show up on anyone's radar, right? Interesting. Cool. And so our job is to figure out how do we find these behaviors and how do we do that
This is a
in an automated
demonstration of
fashion so
Wirecast.
that the SOC can be really, really effective. They know what to look for, they have the evidence they need to figure out next actions, and they know who to pull in to take action quickly before, hopefully, they get too far this way. Right? You find them up here before they get to here, and you basically prevent hopefully prevent damage and any further breaches.
Yeah, so one thing to keep in mind with a lot of this is we're looking for targeted attacks, right? We're looking for targeted behaviors, right? And so a lot of times when you see machine learning, people use it all kinds of different ways. It's
This
buzzwords,
is
so
a
people love to say
demonstration
it,
of
right?
Wirecast.
But a lot of the focus there, and you ask any data scientist, give me all the data, we'll take a look, we'll try and figure out what's going on, right? One of the things that we do, and we're very cognizant of it, is we're trying to find what those attack behaviors look like ahead of time, and it pays off on a few things. So we'll walk through a couple different types of attacks, some of which have been mentioned earlier. So.
Go ahead, please.
Oh, sure, and some different approaches. So this goes back in again. So what's the difference when you're trying to look for a targeted attack or a targeted behavior, an attack behavior that you have?
This is a
that you know what type
demonstration of
context you want to build,
Wirecast.
you know what type of story you want to be able to tell when you actually see that, versus just collecting all the data and actually trying to make sense of it afterwards, right? So one of the things when you start looking at these, when you just collect all the data and you're just trying to make sense of it all, a lot of times what you resort to are anomaly-based mechanisms, right? So you collect it all, you take a look at what's different, you try and do some classifications on there, and then you're just trying to figure that out from there. The reason why you do it is because you don't know what you're looking for in the first place, right? And so then it's really important that you have all that data, because in order to build the story, you need to be able to go and mine all the
This is
data.
a demonstration
The
of
problem is when you start doing
Wirecast.
that, it's really, really expensive, right? So quick kind of setup. So we look at interior network traffic in order to find if there's an attacker on the network, right? So interior traffic also includes stuff going into and out of the network, obviously, right? Because it goes through the inside on the way out. But it's also, how does your laptop connect to your printer? How does your laptop connect to your data center? How do different VMs in your data center talk to each other, even if they're on the same host through the hypervisor? We want to be able to see all that traffic, which means we see
This
a
is
lot
a demonstration of
of anywhere from
Wirecast.
60 to 70 petabytes a month, right? So it's a huge amount of data. We can't ship that all into the cloud, right? That would be really expensive. Even the bandwidth alone, in order to do that, if you're trying to mirror all your interior traffic up into the cloud, that's just not feasible. That's not you can't walk into there. Then if you try and actually deploy hardware in order to be able to track all that data and everything as well on the customer site, it's still something you don't want to pay for, right? You're talking, even in modest sized deployments, you're talking about just a hardware bill of materials without markup of $1 million or $2 million.
This
And
is a
really, really
demonstration of
And let's put it this way,
Wirecast.
all the banks have tried this, the phrase data lake, right? Effectively what you do then is you create a stack of needles, and then you're telling somebody, data scientists or whoever, or security researchers and stuff like that, go find the needle in the needle stack. And I can tell you right now that all the banks that we talk to have tried, and they all are admitting right now that they have failed at this. It is such a hard problem. So it's just interesting.
Yeah.
Right? AIB inspired that story, but I know they don't do that. Other banks have. In fact, we have a bank here reminded me of that. And it's,
This is a
it's a really damn hard
demonstration
problem.
of Wirecast.
So a lot of then what you're looking at is, not only what is it that you're trying to find for an attack behavior, but also how do you prove it to yourself, right? How do you know how to cure it? What type of context do you need in order to be able to get it? And so if you know that you're looking for these specific things ahead of time, you can go ahead and curate that context. You can store that context. And if you're just storing it for the attacks, there's still a lot of hay out there, and you can basically pull it out. You're actually looking for what you are specifically, for those individual needles that you go there. So you don't have to store all the data in order to be able to build that context
This
afterwards.
is a
You don't have to pay the
demonstration of
SecOps people in order
Wirecast.
to go figure all that stuff out. You basically have the right amount of context right when you start. So that's really what we focus on, right? All of that big long list that we had in there were all different targeted behaviors. They're active behaviors that an attacker is going to be when they're inside your network.
And there are actually things that they have to do. Like, the thing is like, everyone thinks attackers are super sophisticated. In some cases they are. But regardless, there are basic things they have to do once they're on your network in order to progress.
Yeah. You get in, you don't know what you landed in, right? You sent a random phishing attack. Okay,
This
so
is
now
a
you get a box.
demonstration
right?
of
Or you got a
Wirecast.
What else is there, right? You got to do some sort of reconnaissance, right? It can be active reconnaissance, right? You can do port sweeps and all that kind of stuff. That's pretty easy. I think everybody can kind of figure out how to look for something like that. You can use services that are already inside the network in order to do reconnaissance, right? You can query LDAP for information and use the services that they normally have. In that case, you're going to be using it differently than other people, but you're going to be using regular services. You're going to be using a valid credential because you got it, right? And so you need to be able to go in and figure out what do those attack behaviors look like? What does the context look like that you need? You know, in that case, if you're using LDAP recon, you're using a service that's normally there. You're using it in an abnormal way for a particular person. So what are the follow-up questions that somebody's going to be able to ask, right? So it's really important that you're able to save off that state so that when you show, hey, this is an attack, it's not just this is different because somebody's doing something different with your LDAP server, right? It's, you know, this looks like some sort of reconnaissance. This is the type of behavior that you tend to see for this user over time. These are the types of hosts that you've used over a period of time, and this is what they're looking at, and this is how they're trying to leverage it. So it's a very different kind of view. Rather than just looking for different, you're trying to look for what is that targeted attack?
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
In order to be able to do something like that.
So I'm looking around the room here. I'm not sure there's enough here. So shameless plug for our blog. Go back to about 2002, 2003. What's the #1 complaint that Microsoft received about Windows 2000? The #1 complaint was all the IT administrators hated every single time they installed a new printer on the network, having to go and install drivers on basically every one of the company's computers, right? So all kinds of different software packages were created, third-party software packages, to go automate this task for people because it was such a pain in the ass. So what Microsoft does, they said, hey, if I identify a printer, I'll ask that printer for its driver, and it'll point me to its driver, I'll get it from Microsoft, or it can actually feed it to me myself. That solves the problem. You install a new printer, it doesn't matter, right? Guess what? Anything can identify itself as a printer. I can identify myself as a printer. And then your machine is going to ask me, where's my driver? I'm going to go, here it is. And it's going to be a complete malware kit.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
This progressed for the last 13 to 14 years. Anybody on any network who decided to identify themselves as a printer could have infected every single Windows machine. You would never have known because you didn't even need an admin password to install a printer driver until last March. We discovered this. Our security researcher discovered this by basically an RTFM. All he did was he read the manual, and he's like, wait a second, let me try something. We disclosed to Microsoft, we waited the period of time, they patched right on their Patch Tuesdays, right? Then we published our blog. I mean, it's like, that's how vulnerable Windows was, and we're talking for more than a decade. Like, warfare. Cool.
The last bit on this as well is if you're looking for those anomalies and you're just looking for things that are different, you're just going to find something that's different, right? You don't know if it's bad. You don't know what the context is that you need in order to figure that out. So you need to do a lot of digging and searching in order to try and find that. That's people, that's time.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
You're basically gapped by what is the skill set of that person that happens to be looking, right? They may have enough context in order to be able to find it. They may not. They may treat it as a false positive, but it truly is a true positive, and they just weren't equipped in order to be able to do that, right? So a lot of what we really focus on is what is that learning, what do you need, what kind of context do you need, and how do you discover this as well. So we got a couple of examples here.
I'm excited. So we're going to deep dive on just two from kind of like that list that we had that we think are interesting because
This
of
is a
the
demonstration
approaches that
of
we use.
Wirecast.
So Joaquin's going to take care of one, I'll take care of the other. But this is actually a time where I like to ask people to ask questions as we're going along because we're going to describe what an attack looks like. Then we're going to describe kind of what our thesis is of how to basically identify this behavior. And if you guys have interest, please ask as we're going along because I think it's interesting.
Yeah, and the key here too is it's the application of machine learning and AI in order to be able to try and identify these as well, right? So there are ways that people have tried to do it and currently do it
This
in order
is
to
a
try and
demonstration
find these
of
things, but
Wirecast.
there are shortcomings in those as well, right? And we find that with AI and some of the machine learning that we do, we're able to bridge that bit. So here's an oldie but a goodie. Somebody talked about it earlier. So SQL injection, right? So it's a big one. It's on the OWASP list. It's something you're always looking for, right? But you have some sort of unprotected field. Somebody can enter in some data in there. You don't sanitize that input, and it ends up going in, and they can use that in order to leverage an attack into your network, right?
This
There are all kinds
is
of
a
different
demonstration
measures
of
that you can do,
Wirecast.
right? We just talked about it, right? So static analysis is a good way in order to look at it. And you brought up the point as well, right? So you do static analysis, you depend on every single one of your third-party vendors to do that static analysis too. Not everybody does, right? So you don't really know where you're protected or where you're not. And once it goes live in the customer environment, it's up to them to scan, right? They may be doing scans, they may be doing authenticated scans, unauthenticated scans, they may see it, they may not. you really don't know where that's going to be, right? So there's value in doing all of this stuff.
This is a demonstration of
There isn't, because it's a way
Wirecast.
to try and prevent that. But the problem is you don't know that everybody's doing it everywhere. It's also expensive, right? It's difficult to do, and that's why people don't always do it.
And people always hate WAFs, web application firewalls, because if they mistakenly stop traffic, generally that's a transaction that represented some monetary value to the company. And so many people in IT get yelled at when that happens. So.
Again, since it's expensive and tough,
Wirecast.
people tend to do it only on places that they don't trust, right? You have a lot of services that are deployed throughout your network. If you're a big 100,000 people, just because they're not internet facing doesn't mean they're not a liability.
I mean, basically everyone here, I'm guessing, if their company uses web applications internally, right? I mean, everyone does, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Most of those aren't hardened and not protected.
Yeah. Or if they are, then certainly, it's an afterthought. It's a second order thing.
This is a demonstration
So again,
of Wirecast.
you use that in order. You can, even if you find an internal attack, you can use that in order to manage and continue to grow throughout the network, right? So it could be a simple thing that nobody thinks about. It ends up having a default password for a database that has authentication, and then you move on from there, right? So every one of these are just potential holes in order to continue to go. So this is all the reason why we should be looking for SQL injection and some of the things, right, that people do in order to try and protect it. So when you start looking at SQL injection, one of the big problems is when you're trying to
This is a
identify
demonstration
right?
of
You're seeing a huge
Wirecast.
number of these queries. You don't really know what they're supposed to look like. You don't know what valid queries are. You don't know what invalid queries are. And so what people tend to do is they, even in OWASP, I think they publish a list of all the little things that people will do in order to do test statements and all those kinds of things that are representative of an attack. Problem is sometimes those appear in invalid things, right? And you have all these different false positives. And what's interesting is we started to look at it as what is SQL and what are you actually looking at? The language itself, and what if you kind of look at it through a
This is a demonstration
So,
of Wirecast.
one thing that's
the key kind of being there, the SQL actually is a defined language.
That's right. So it's a language. It's got a it's got a grammar to it. It's got a feel. And one of the big things that you see a lot now is with NLP is trying to do sentiment analysis.
And so natural language processing has become a pretty hot topic, especially since Google's TensorFlow became much more sophisticated and public. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So what if you treated the SQL language
This
as if
is
you're
a
trying to parse data?
demonstration of
What if you use the
Wirecast.
same techniques that you use for sentiment analysis? So again, sentiment analysis on NLP became really a big deal when people were trying to make sense of gobs and gobs of data. So does everybody like Beyonce's new album, right? Does somebody really hate the waffle iron that they bought on Amazon, right? People are writing all these different ways of trying to evaluate that sentiment based off of reviews, based off of tweets, based off of whatever that happens to be. And they're trying to basically deduce what's the intent of what that person's trying to say. If you start to, instead of applying that
This
on
is a
English, and you actually
demonstration
look
of
into
Wirecast.
SQL, and you start to map that into what are the attack surfaces and what is the reasoning behind the different statements that you're using, you actually get a pretty cool technique of trying to define what does that attack surface look like and how does it look.
So if you have to do NLP on every single SQL statement, does that not slow down the process?
Yeah, so what you do is you have training sets where you have NLP on the data that goes in, and then you tend to look for things that partner on an active attack.
Yeah, and actually this is an important thing. For our software,
This is a
we're not actually
demonstration
in line.
of
We will not
Wirecast.
make policy decisions for you.
Okay.
So we have a little bit more of a leeway because we're operating generally off a tap or a span on the network, on the core switch, ideally the core switch.
Sure. So you're not slowing down.
Yeah.
Yeah,
application
that's right.
anyway.
So we've got, and we need to do that because a lot of things we do requires context over a significant period of time.
So again, it's leveraging learning in order to be able to figure out what does an attack look like, right? And it's much better than, okay, how do I have a set of regular expressions or a
This
set of
is a
signatures that I'm trying
demonstration
to
of
apply, and how do I try and
Wirecast.
normalize data so that I can apply those signatures, and is that brittle? Is the normalization layer brittle? Is the attack surface, instead what you do is you say, what does an attack look like? What does the sentiment of that attack look like? What do I tend to see in those types of statements? Then you use a layer in order to be able to process that language as if it is a language in order to be able to pull out that sentiment, and then you just look at it. Right? And as you go in there, you can start to group these things, and you can see, hey, this is this type of an attack, and it's because it looks like that. And you can provide the type of context that you can see. And again, we save off the
This
SQL
is a
statement, show it to you.
demonstration of
When you fire, we don't
Wirecast.
have to save every single SQL statement that everybody ever did, right? You just, this is the detection, this is the port that it was on, this is the server that it is on, this is the statement that was run, and this is why we think it's bad.
This is one of those things where there's also, you've got to start putting a lot of faith in the math, because the math has, especially recently, gotten very, very complicated. And it comes back with results that, so we measure efficiency and efficacy of basically everything which we see, both true positives and false positives.
This
And
is a
this particular one
demonstration
is
of
extremely,
Wirecast.
extremely good, but it's very tricky because as you start to digest, what's actually happening in the NLP math, it is, it hurts your brain a lot. Very few people who can do it. I cannot do it, right? I can evaluate the results, I can evaluate the inputs. What it's doing on the inside is just amazing what they can do with the machine learning now, especially with the compute power that we have available to us, right? You can run GPUs on Amazon, so it's really nice.
The cool thing about this too is every one of our customers is running this stuff in their network, which means we have a huge, essentially distributed analysis platform.
This is a
Our
demonstration
customers
of
provide us the
Wirecast.
data.
Yeah.
They paid for the hardware, they've racked the box, and then we can go in and actually collect those statistics and use the data that we find there. So it's not just what does one particular bank see, right? It's what does everybody see? What does the efficacy look like? What types of things might end up breaking these, and then how can we apply that back into everything else as well. So again, it's the advantage of not trying to do it yourself, right? But leveraging the fact that you have a herd of
Yeah, the network effect.
So where do you get your bad training?
This
So
is a
we have a lot of
demonstration
security
of
researchers.
Wirecast.
That's a big part of it as well. And then anytime that we end up with other reports as well, especially with pen tests, we put ourselves in a heightened mode as well. As well.
And then the security researchers, in general, we've got a good handle on most of the kits that are out there, right, that do a lot of this. We also do things like run, not by vector, but anonymized, but we'll run like capture the flags and things like that publicly, and we'll see what new techniques people are using and stuff like that. So that's usually where we get a lot of data.
Again, it's
This
a
is a
slightly
demonstration of
nuanced view. So when
Wirecast.
we use these kits, right, the easy way to look is, okay, what is, for instance, with Metasploit, what does a signature for a interpreter look like? A piece of malware that the Metasploit will try and install. That's an easy way to try and detect Metasploit, but it's not actually detecting a type of attack, right? It's just detecting whether somebody's using that tool for that attack. And it may be a way that is very common that people tend to use, but it's not very effective if somebody else tries to use that technique somewhere else.
It's not abstract.
That's right, exactly. So if you use, okay, what is Metasploit trying to do, and what's the type of attack? And
This is a
how's
demonstration
how does
of
that work? Then you
Wirecast.
can find any sort of attack that looks like that. And in fact, a lot of the 0 days that you tend to see out there, we're one of the first ones to fire because we see the behavior of that. We may not be able to call it what it is because we don't know what it is, right? It hasn't been labeled yet. But we are, yeah, exactly. But we are a very effective tool for trying to find that and see where it is on your network.
And shadow brokers made things significantly more complicated for the world as well. They're the ones who are basically releasing the RSA. Right. Anyone here run Kaspersky? Okay.
Oh, good job.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
That's all we got here.
There we go.
Yep.
Yeah, so one thing that's really important is everyone's familiar with how firewalls work. Basically, they're stateful firewalls, and since about Checkpoint 1999, they only allow conversations effectively or data to be transferred from the outside in if the conversation was started from the inside of the network. The theory being that someone's trying to attack you, they won't already have a communications channel established. So we talk about external remote access. Remote access
This
tunnels
is a
are like what we like to call them. They're called
Wirecast.
rats because that's just an easier way to describe them. But the point here is that through the printer exploit, which probably all of you have been exposed to and didn't know, through the phishing that of course no one here clicked on, or whatever it happens to be, right? They've got a foothold in your network. So the way the communications works is an attacker on the outside, this blue dot here, right? He's not going to tell you to come talk to me, right? Or else we know where he is, and the FBI busts down his door and arrests him, right? He says, go talk to one of my thousands or tens of thousands of bots that I own, right? So this guy here is pre-programmed generally with a very, very, very long list of places to go try to communicate to, and basically respond back, first, left, right, whatever happens to be one it can get to. So it's on the inside, that's there. It then says, I gotta go call out. It finds a common place. You have the slide. And so now you've got the attacker communicating here. You've got this person who's initiated the request through the firewall, so it's allowed. It's now talking to them. So anything from here will be allowed back in because this is seen as the same flow or the same conversation, right? So they meet at the meeting point.
This is a
These
demonstration of
packages
Wirecast.
all do this. Now you're going to notice the two at the bottom, and I'll talk about that here in a second, right? So blockchain is very common. Poison Ivy, Shadow Broker, they released NSO, the NSA, which by the way, did everyone know that NSA uses Jira? Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's in the documents. Yeah. I know. WebXMT here. So why is this there? Because I don't know if you guys have used it, but you can share your desktop. So when you're on WebEx and you click share desktop with somebody on the outside, that is exactly a rat. And what we found, there are kits out there which will emulate WebEx. WebEx is generally, the ports are open and the protocol is not well profiled, so it's something which can be easily exploited. TVR falls into that too, right? And we light up exactly every single time someone on the inside says remote, you can take control of my desktop, usually for support purposes or something like that, boom, we light up. And it's because it's actually a rat. Right? So, any questions on this? That's kind of how it works. So, trick is different protocols, vast majority are encrypted, right? HTTPS is popular. Some people get away on DNS, right? But regardless, the communications are not going to be obvious, or else it would be stopped very quickly through just simple policy and application filtering at the firewall. So what we've got to do is we've got to do something more, right? And we've got to use different indicators. So next one. So the theory is the time series probably provides a clue, because on the other end is going to be, after the initial communications happen, that's usually all automated. But once they got a hook, in general, a series of things has to happen. That's almost always done by a human. So humans are going to look different than a machine,
demonstration
right? And what you're going to start seeing is you start seeing the amount of traffic and the direction of the traffic and source of the traffic change. And so part of the reason why we need the tap or the span as opposed to, say, NetFlow or Symlogs is, in this case, we actually have to be right on top of the timing, right? How many packets are being sent by when and by whom, right? Because what this says is that humans always almost have variable length silences. We're never going to say exactly the same thing in the same pattern. Usually, the inside will have the flow open, it's established the connection, and it'll be waiting for something to come from the outside. So you'll see that start from there. And then right here, you'll see, whoops, typo. More data than has been inputted. Short commands waiting for responses. Like it's going to go do, do LDAP-search, and try, dump all your usernames at least, right? Or it'll be, AD, blah, 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 whatever happens to be, and get more data going from the inside to the outside after short commands.
They feel like things that if I knew you were doing this to detect me, and I wanted to hide.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
My way around things.
Yeah, you could.
You could,
yeah.
If you are manually trying to do that, and you're doing it around, then you want, when you have input, for there to be an expectation that input's going to be mapped with what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Otherwise, it becomes. It's like when you have a really laggy connection over SSH, right? It's infuriating.
So I can't remember. Did we define the RNN on here? So this one we chose because we use a recurrent neural network. So
this is a
recurrent neural network
of
is
Wirecast.
In general, most of us who went through CS class at some point probably wrote a perceptron or something like that. If you ever took an advanced data structures course, and of course we can write a single layer one because that you can understand, but once you get into multi-layers, it's like basically impossible to debug. So recurrent neural network is truly quote-unquote deep learning. So what it is doing is a time series analysis, which basically says, I know something at this point, I go to the next point, this point then says, what did I know back at this point? And it does that over and over and over again.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
Ad nauseum / infinity. And it says, okay, all of these things have to inform my previous assumptions. And that's what quote-unquote deep learning is. And so it works for this because of all these factors, which is you can't tell just by the top level. Like these by themselves, you can sort of kind of profile, but you don't actually know what a normal network looks like, and you don't know how much of the previous information has to inform your later information and vice versa. So what we do is we use an RNN for this, the recurrent neural network, and it actually ends up being extremely effective in our experience for identifying these types of things. Is there one more to allow or not?
I don't think so.
Okay, so that's kind of how we apply very advanced machine learning for that. Does anyone have any questions on that, either the attack or the approach or anything like that?
So again, if you were to try and write code to do this, right, everybody could squint and figure out, okay, in the perfect case that would work, right? Or you can figure out ways in order to try and do it. Then you add in one more type of protocol, and it's like, okay, well, account for that. One more. It's like, okay. And then eventually, like, you look at this thing, there's this big ugly mess, and then
This is a
somebody else that does
demonstration
it,
of
that's like it, right?
Wirecast.
The advantage of going into learning is every one of those layers in that neural network is the learning, the mechanism actually writing that code for you, right, and understanding. And so there may be intricate, tiny little ways that different parameters play with each other that make no sense to any of us. If you were to try and write that in code, nobody could make any sense at all. They just happen to be related, and they happen to be predictive. And the neural network itself will be able to bring those out and bring them up. And then if you want to try and
This
play
is
with
a
more things,
demonstration
you don't have
of
to figure
Wirecast.
this stuff out, right? You just place some more traffic in it, and you teach it, and it keeps growing and growing and growing. The reason why they call it a neural network, again, is because that's how your brain works, right? It's actually mapping out how neurons learn over time. And so you use basically the mechanism that the brain does in order to be able to form thought and patterns. You just apply that in software as well.
This is a big part of like, there's very few people in anybody's SOC, right, who's going to be able to do this, right? This is hard. And
This
so we're
is a
doing it, providing a
demonstration
tool
of
automate this type of
Wirecast.
investigation and say, hey, here, look here, here's why you need to look here. And also, like Joaquin said earlier, we provide the PCAP, which says you can actually look at the evidence if you can get down to that level, right? So that's kind of how we're using AI in these two cases. Actually, I'm not sure if you guys know this, quick trivia. So there's, I don't know, tens of thousands, millions of different versions of malware out there, maybe tens of hundreds of millions of different versions of malware. Almost all those can trace their quote-unquote family tree back to approximately 10, basically, toolkits that are out there.
This is a
Everything else is a
demonstration
variation
of
that's been
Wirecast.
come off one of those 10 toolkits. So the number of toolkits actually used by attackers from a heritage standpoint is relatively small. But then everybody takes those toolkits, you can buy them, you can steal them, whatever you want to do, and then customizes them in some way to provide their malware. Even to the point where many of the better guys, or many of the toolkits as they evolve, every time you publish or create a new piece of malware, it's actually unique from basically a hash standpoint and a packaging standpoint and a packer standpoint and all of that.
This
So
is
it's
a
but it's still
demonstration
interesting.
of
It's not,
Wirecast.
it's not actually a ton of like amazing new engineering that's gone on. There's really kind of this kind of core 10, and then everybody's done variations or taken the code and modified it in particular ways for a use case.
What's tough is when the government actually leaks.
Yeah, that's
they write it
yeah,
packaging
that's
for you.
it's very problematic.
Against you.
Do you have a way to train the system for false positives to filter that?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, so
no, sorry.
yeah, there are a couple ways. So one is if it's a true false positive, right, and it's something that's always expected behavior.
This is a
then we would train that in.
demonstration of
I mean, that's the
Wirecast.
point of the neural network. You can play that in. There's some things that are actually interesting when we deploy, where it is a false positive, but it's a false positive the customer expects to see.
Well, actually, no, it's a true positive.
Or a true positive.
It's a true
yes.
positive, like WebEx, for example. That's a true positive, but you use WebEx and you expect to see that, right? So you don't want to be bothered with that.
If you were to install on a customer site and they have a vulnerability scanner and you didn't trigger off of that,
Boom, those fire up.
you would bring it down.
Or my favorite one is he's from Austin, and so they bought different
demonstration
TVs
of
that we bought.
Wirecast.
What's the brand? Samsung? I can't remember.
I think we're Sharp. Yeah.
Sharp. Okay, whatever the brand is they bought, the first thing the thing does when it powers up is actually does a network scan, right? And what it's looking for is other Sharp devices or something like that, right? But it literally does a full-blown network scan. And so anyway, so we light up on that. But you know you've got Sharp TVs, right? There's actually a light bulb. It's not the Philips one, but there's another light bulb that someone makes, one of the smart light bulbs, where as soon as it's on your wireless, it actually does a scan also, which is just interesting. We have a customer who apparently has like
This
1,000
is
of
a
those things
demonstration
installed,
of
and so it looks
Wirecast.
like there's like a scan going off like every second. So you have to be able to filter this out, right? You got to be able to decide what's important.
So in those examples where we feel like it would be something that you would expect to see, we basically have a triage component where you can go in and say, okay, here's a vulnerability scanner. I expect it to be doing these types of things. Stop telling me about it. I want to go see other things. And so it wouldn't be something that we train away, but it would be something that we allow you to swallow.
Like we were doing a product demo, which we didn't want to make as a
This is a
product demo.
demonstration of
One of the things you
Wirecast.
see is that we basically have like our X and Y kind of graph plot there, and things in the top right are really bad, and then it goes down to the bottom left where it's like these things you should know about. It's up to you whether you want to worry about them or not, right? Most of our customers, for example, if a machine's just doing Bitcoin mining, they're so used to seeing common malware that they're just like file a ticket with IT, and whenever they get around to re-imaging that system, it'll get fixed. But there's like they don't actually take it seriously or worry about it, right? From a SOC perspective. which I think is
This
fascinating.
is a
Do you map,
demonstration of
patterns
Wirecast.
to CVEs or stuff like that?
No, we don't, because we're behaviors, right? So we're not signature based, right? And the vast majority of CVs are going to be, that type.
Yeah, you're matching some sort of signature based on the post profile.
Have you ever found government surveillance?
And we certainly look for behaviors. Yeah.
But that doesn't answer the question.
It kind of does.
That's a yes.
It wasn't marriage government.
Demonstration of Wirecast.
What about something like a human within the network that's exfiltrating?
So exfil is actually a good one. So that's actually, we will also usually detect that too. So we've got a couple different things that we do. So like one of the most basic learnings we do is before firing on exfils, we learn what does the company usually use, right? Whether it's Dropbox or whatever, right, or Box or anything like that, and say, okay, this, if there's traffic going to this in these different ways, right, that we'll generally learn on that. We get really serious because since we're watching all the network traffic, if we see a data pull from one of your servers or from another machine of any sort, and then we see that same amount of data then going outside, then we you're in the top right. Right? Even if you collect it from multiple servers, if we see the combination of the network traffic, roughly speaking, it's not exact, of pulling from multiple servers, all of a sudden get pushed up somewhere, we light up, like seriously, right? And that's actually been something where we've done everything from catch grad students at an educational institute, taking stuff off the network they shouldn't, employees who give notice the next day, you go back and you find out that their machine was pulling stuff up and pushing it into the cloud. Like we found kind of all kinds of crazy stuff that you can imagine.
And since we do, just one quick point on there too, since we do it over time series data and we're not actually doing it by evaluating content.
So
Demonstration of Wirecast.
Right? They're very name what they do. Then as we got into the harder stuff, we got a little bit more lenient with our names. Data smuggler, right? Smash and grab, slow bleed. So you can trickle information out. That's obviously what that means. Smash and grab is grabbing a bunch of stuff and getting it out quickly, things like that. So we've gotten more creative with our naming.
What kind of volume of traffic would you need to see for it to be flagged? Like, are we talking about gigabytes or
It depends on the detection, right? So if you're looking just for an abnormal
demonstration of Wirecast.
basic connection to somewhere on the cloud and a certain amount of data push, it's in the megabytes range. I'm not sure exactly what it is, and there's actually a couple of parameters that go into that. It's not just size.
As well, based on what we expect to see.
What we expect to see with that particular host. The smash and grab is actually looking for you pulling from other servers. So it's actually just matching up whatever kind of, roughly speaking, we've seen you connect to other servers over a period of time and then pushing roughly that amount outside. So it depends, right? And then slow bleed is looking for a continuous stream of kind of traffic going out. So we usually sense it later because we require time evidence for that. That's an example.
There was talk earlier about one of the, I guess, the best practices for software development internally is building layered systems, HDS everywhere, VPCs, things like that. I mean, is it not kind of, is a contradiction there is that the best thing an organization should do is effectively prevent any sort of attack from working, not just from you, but from any adversary, and they should
This
basically
is a
hide
demonstration
their
of
almost as
Wirecast.
well as they do their external.
No, so actually, where's Stuart? Oh, there you are. So Stuart knows absolutely everything there is about switches. And so in general, on the hardware side, when you set up a tap or a span, there's no way to get that on software. There's no way to get it on the normal ports. It's basically a defined tap or span. So that's not a risk factor for the way that we gather data. At the rates you're getting data, that's we're at multiples 10 gigs and stuff like that.
Right, like you shouldn't see any SQL.
This is a demonstration of
So
Wirecast.
here, so it's interesting, right? So we also sit in the data center, and we sit on hypervisors in the data center as well. So a lot of times in there, you may terminate a node that's doing SSL decryption or anything like that because you don't want to have your backend servers doing that as well. So the fact that we have visibility into that makes that detection very pertinent and useful. But on other things, absolutely, like in terms of just regular campus traffic, that should be encrypted. In that case, a lot of the things that we tend to leverage more in terms of time sequencing and that kind of stuff as well. Right, because that isn't dependent on.
This is a
on
demonstration of
That
Wirecast.
is what you're
Was
asking.
that what you're
Like
asking?
you're just using the flows as a way to
So the ordering bytes over time, right, can give you a very decent view in terms of are you tunneling from protocols over protocols, or are you, is it some sort of manual intervention or not?
But I mean, to be clear, also in some cases we have to have either the man in the middle, or we have to be after. We have to usually be in the data center to see the traffic in front of whatever. Almost everyone runs virtual machines now for all of their databases and apps and stuff like that. So we have to be at that layer to
This is
see
a
it.
demonstration of Wirecast.
And again, it's different layers. Right? So if you're when we deploy off a span port, but then we distill that traffic and we don't send that traffic anywhere else. So it's not like we're sending unencrypted traffic up to a head end or into a main unit in order to be able to process. What we're doing is we're doing all the protocol parsing locally, and then we're sending it to still form that we actually process from there. So it's a little less sensitive than actually trying to, and that's actually one of the big problems with a lot of people's approach for this is, okay, I want to segment my network, and I want to see what is interesting in something. What I think is interesting in the network, and then I'll just shoot that off into a SaaS service in order to be able to analyze. It's easier to sell that way because you manage all the infrastructure and you can do everything that way. But it also means you may be taking your most important sensitive data and shoving it straight out into the internet, right, to go for analysis. And we haven't chosen that route for obvious reasons.
How do you sort of make banks or make financial institutions aware of what you're sending
This
in?
is a demonstration of
Yeah,
because you represent a risk.
So no, let's actually be clear. So everything we do is opt-in.
Yeah.
Right. Best case, so we have no financial incentives. Anyone want to guess at what percent of our customers opt in of their own volition? No, it's about 65.
We have banks as customers.
Yeah, banks fall. All the banks that we have as customers fall into what we call air gapped. They actually don't allow any direct connection. So like even when we do support, Stuart's like, okay, open up the WebEx, give me control, all that stuff. I mean, so it's like, but the bank customers are 100% all the time air gapped. So those we don't have actually data or statistics from.
But still get the advantage of it.
Yeah, but how do you convince other companies and other banks that what you're sending out is what you should be sending out?
Oh, yeah. So first of all, we'll allow them to we'll insert their cert, into our chain, and they can inspect it, or we provide them a list. And honestly, everyone pretty much trusts us. A couple people have looked and they're like, oh yeah, you're doing exactly what you said you did.
This is a
right,
demonstration
and we also
of
go way out of our way to anonymize. To make sure that we pick up no personal information. We never pick up anything which could possibly be password related, a bunch of things, right? So we try very hard. And we also have data retention policies that we're very good at, right? Everything's destroyed after 90 days, right? It's never direct access to the data. Has very few of us in the company actually have the ability to do that. What it's more used for is as training sets for the data scientists. But the data scientists don't actually look directly at the data, except for in rare cases.
It's a huge competitive advantage for us. A large portion of our sales is
demonstration of Wirecast.
And it's one of the big reasons why we decided to come to Dublin, and start a site out here, is because that resonates a lot better out here. A lot of our full opt-in customers are not in Europe; they tend to be in the States, just because of different laws and regulations.
It's startling how many customers, once you start, if I go that way, so you don't break your necks. Once you start speaking to customers about the data sharing and the benefits of sharing metadata, it's all anonymized.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
They start to realize that actually, if I share this data, the next release of the product benefits me because my data is being used to teach these algorithms, which means next release of the product, it's even better at learning my network. And once you talk about that to customers, it's startling how many of them go from that very defensive position of no way I'm turning this on to actually this is really cool. And we have these conversations with support frequently.
It is metadata, which is important, right? Because once you get to the actual PCAPs in the United States, it's actually interesting because PCAPs actually fall under wiretapping laws. And metadata does not, per the courts, because you're not actually monitoring the conversation, you're getting statistics on the conversation. So there are all kinds of things that we worry about depending on where we are, but if in doubt, just turn it off.
The other thing too is most of these we shipped out to customer boxes without them enabled for notifications. Customer visible.
They're running but not customer visible.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll run them in what we call precursor mode,
This
which is
is a
essentially
demonstration
silent mode
of
where we can
Wirecast.
anonymize statistics and keep tuning and tuning and tuning that algorithm. So when we go live with an algorithm, you're not going to get a bunch of false positives on it. You're not going to see a bunch of garbage, right? That actually has been tuned And so the advantage of sending us those anonymized statistics is when it goes live on your network, it's actually already been tuned on your network. And you just include it.
More questions?
Once you light up like a Christmas tree, do you give advice to the user as to what to do with it?
Yeah, so one of the reasons why people like us is because we have a lot of depth.
This is a
What I mean by that
demonstration
is,
of Wirecast.
we show you a summary of exactly what's happened with all the most important facts. But then there's an ability on almost all those facts to drill in deeper, right, all the way down to the PCAP. And one of the things we also have is we basically have a summary page. We call them our one-pagers. Sometimes they're 1.5 pages, which basically says, at the top level, here are the things that we looked for and that we saw. Here's what could cause this, right? Both bad and good traffic that could cause this. Here's the likely business impact. Here are the steps to mitigate, most likely. And so we provide that because a lot of our end users aren't super sophisticated about what these attacks are, what they mean, what they could do. And so we provide that. And then of course, we actually just tell our customers to field questions or and they contact support and then we answer their questions too.
Yeah, I mean, you said you didn't map to CVEs because like mapping to that sort of signature might be useful. Well, patch OpenSSL and that goes away or whatever.
Yeah, no, we're looking for behaviors, so we're not actually capturing things which would indicate. So all the CVEs could trigger behaviors because they're usually exploits or vulnerabilities which are being identified, right? But how they're used once those exploits or vulnerability is attacked. Dave.
To what extent are you seeing attackers starting to leverage machine learning and AI to sort of fuzz the kind of attacks? Knowing that they're using AI and machine learning.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we've seen any toolkit to date actually incorporate significant.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
You will see like buzzers and those kinds of things, which again we're not going to be looking at because that's on the host. But you will see buzzers where they use learning tactics in order to dramatically reduce things. So a fuzzer basically, you throw a bunch of random stuff and you see if you can get something to crash, right? The problem is you have to throw a lot of valid stuff or stuff that's not going to crash an application before you actually see it crash. And so you'll see different techniques, especially when compared with dynamic or static code analysis, and then learning in order to figure out, hey, are there certain patterns that I can go to?
This is
so
a
that it reduces the
demonstration
sample
of
space
Wirecast.
So that then you fire in a day rather than a week or a month or however long it tends to take. But we wouldn't see that because it's on a host and it's something that you tend to look at.
And sometimes also like our stuff is more some of these things are more actually looking really at just learning your networks. Like I said, every network's a snowflake. Like so I always smile like this one here, suspicious admin. So the way that we make this thing work is we're monitoring basically anybody who's using administration protocol, so RDP, SSH, et cetera. We're monitoring the protocol, what port it's used. We're looking for who connects to who, both directions. So who's administering what machines, and then what machines are being administered by who. And if something changes in that conversation, which could include somebody connecting over RDP from a different type of keyboard, right? So we let up on a pen test recently for one of the healthcare, U.S. healthcare clients. They paid in English, a British company, to basically pen test them. And as soon as they got in on the RDP, they switched their keyboard layout to be a British keyboard, right? And so like that's like an interesting thing, right? Where the fact that we say this host is normally administered by these three people, right? It could be the PowerShell administration, could be patch application, whatever it happens to be. If anybody besides these three started administering it, we tell you. Or if this guy normally administers these 15 machines, if he started administering a 16th one, we tell you. We tell you different levels of urgency depending on what it is.
Or if this guy always uses a US keyboard and then he's using a different
This
keyboard.
is a demonstration of Wirecast.
And this one's a big deal for data centers because if people are familiar with how modern data centers are laid out, basically for security purposes, they almost always establish what they call a jump system. So there's one entry point to that data center, and that way they can just focus all their attention on making sure that thing doesn't get compromised. But if you just compromise someone's host who's an admin, right, you're going to be able to get into that jump start, right? The question is, do you SSH to it? Well, maybe the guy never SSH to it. He always uses RDP, or vice versa, right? Or you see the keyboard change because all of a sudden now it's in Cyrillic. The things we have to look for, as well as timing, things like that, to be effective and also not to false positive too much.
And this stuff would be a huge pain to write. Right? Like, how do you discover this stuff? How do you think of all the different options, all that kind of stuff? And if you're able to leverage learning in order to be able to do it, some of these things fall out pretty naturally. leads you to some unexpected conclusions, which is cool. It did its job for you. It did your job for you. Made it easy.
Another question. So some of the names are really interesting. I'm just wondering if the suspicious remote exec, does that refer to the VP of sales trying to WebEx into Janet from accounting?
No, that's generally going to focus on your PowerShell stuff. Like if we see PowerShell being used, where and how it's being used, and if it's never been used before, things like that.
The SMB protocol has a function called PSExec, which is a way of being able to do to execute remote commands, and it's a very common way of trying to attack a network.
Mostly because most networks allow it because that's a way to administer machines. So we have to learn.
Conveniently enough to ship out software patches for security kits.
Yeah, exactly.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
We actually caught one of those very recently at one of our customers in Germany, where he came into support and he said, "Oh, we've got this false positive on our network. This account's being reported to be used and to distribute stuff onto our PCs, and it's not. That's a genuine account. It's actually one of our compliance accounts." And when we looked into it, we looked further and further. No, your compliance account's being compromised.
It's distributing malware.
But actually, someone else using your compliance account to distribute malware.
This
Is
is a
everyone like afraid enough
demonstration
now?
of
Like
Wirecast.
It's pretty amazing what they've got going on out there. Any other questions? And
How big is Vector?
There's 135 people and growing in Dublin. Sorry, yeah.
I'm sure it's Zartis,
Zartis, they're our friends.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Guys, big thank you to all of you for coming along this evening. Big thank you to the speakers. You did a really good job, all of you. Very, very interesting content. And a special thank you to Laura and Louisa for putting the whole thing together. John and I love taking credit for other people's work, but we have to say that you guys did everything here. We are feeding you. We're going to move the chairs back. There'll be food, with more booze to drink, so enjoy your evening. Thanks for coming.
Demonstration of Wirecast.
Good idea.